Mark, tell us a little bit about the National Football Foundation.
Well, the National Football Foundation is a great organization. It really supports and promotes amateur football at all levels throughout the United States. And it's consisted of chapters. I think there's 120 chapters right now in the United States. They typically have been in places they typically thrive in college football towns, Athens, Georgia, Knoxville, Tennessee, Austin, Texas, Columbus, Ohio, places where there's big time college football programs. But they also thrive in smaller towns throughout the country where there's a football culture. The National Football, in addition to supporting and promoting the game, the National Football Foundation also owns and operates the College Football Hall of Fame. So they're the custodian of that. And that's a big deal. And most recently, they built a brand new Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. That is really if you're into college football, that's a great place to go. So they operate the process to maintain that facility, but also to elect new players and coaches to the Hall of Fame. But the thing I like most, so the organization really thrives on two levels. On the big picture national industrial football complex of being involved in the college football playoffs, the College Football Hall of Fame, but then also at a local level, on the chapter level, through these 120 chapters, where in New York City, for instance, the chapter that I'm chairman of, I have a board of directors, guys who come from all walks of life. We've got the finance guys, but we've also got Mark Holtzman, who from the Yankees. We've got Ernie Accorsi, the retired manager of the Giants. My friend Rob Whalen, who is the director of the Heisman Trophy, executive director of the Heisman Trophy. Donnie McPherson, great Syracuse player from Long Island. Got a very diverse and influential board. And, we have a dinner every spring where we recognize Mr. Football New York City, the player of the year in New York City. And we pick an Elite 11 team, the 11 best scholar athlete football players in the 5 boroughs of New York City, coach of the year. We recognize what we call our Ernie Accorsi award winner, which is somebody who's done great things in the game of football, but also off the field. And then we do honor a couple other people, our Founders Award, different things. But it's a great night for football because the Giants and the Jets sponsor it, along with the New York Athletic Club and various other private backers as well. And, we typically get about 350 people to the dinner. And it's like the one night a year where our local New York City football community comes together, and we recognize these kids who have not just excelled on the field, but also excelled in the classroom, and they're good citizens, and they represent all the things that we want to see these guys representing in the game of football.
Do you think your foundation and company really helps shed light on maybe, like you were saying, some of those other lesser known football schools that are great football cultures, whether it's FCS schools, whether it's D3, something like that? Do you think that ends up helping raising just not necessarily awareness, but just more, I guess, media showing and more publicity to them?
Well, the one thing I think that I've seen, I became chairman of the New York City chapter. I don't know. It's interesting because the National Football Foundation was formed in 1947 by Dwight D. Eisenhower, General Douglas MacArthur, and the great sports writer Grantland Rice. And they really wanted to promote team sports, and in particular football, as a way post-World War II to, foster leadership and teamwork and all the things that we're talking about, academic performance, contributions to local communities. They really wanted to to really form this organization to really help mold the next generation of young men in the country post-World War II. So every year since then, they had this black tie gala, still do, at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. Last couple of years, the Waldorf has been undergoing renovations, but so they've done it at the Marriott Marquis. But the point being, for that dinner, it brings, the entire football community nationally together. It's a, $8,000 a seat table, and all the college football programs, are there, and they have their own set of awards and the whole 9 yards. But what I'm getting at in a roundabout way, locally, what I've seen happen since I took over our chapter, these New York City coaches are doing incredible work. Okay, now I don't know whether I'll say we've made our own contributions to their culture, but from where we started, let's say 8 years ago, and where the kind of kids that we were putting on the team, the Elite 11 team, those kids are selected not only for football but also academics and their community work and their leadership and so on and so forth. The caliber, and not to say anything negative about our first team or our second team, but the kids that are making these teams are so impressive. It's incredible. And the coaches in New York City, Ernie Accorsi said to me when we were getting our chapter off the ground, he said, Mark, George Young said to me once that these kids in New York City have to overcome so much just to play the game of football. They got to take the subway. They might not have a practice field. They might be able to only practice a couple days a week, whatever the situation may be. So we've gone from that kind of environment to an environment where, these kids are getting highly recruited now, and they're getting professional high school coaching. I like to call that, the coaching that they're getting professional, because these coaches in the city, they're going to clinics, they're going to colleges to visit, they're taking their kids places to partake in, passing camps, and it's really elevated the level of play, but also the level of kids that are kind of coming out of New York City now. Our first Mr. New York football, Isaiah Wilson from Brooklyn Poly Prep, we started this award 4 years ago. He was just selected the last pick in the first round of the NFL draft by the Tennessee Titans. So you're getting really good kids out of this area, Long Island included, but also New York, who are getting great coaching, great guidance, and then going on to have like really good college careers and sometimes even pro.
As you guys know, we are talking to Ithaca Football Hall of Famer and National Football Foundation and New York Chairman Mark Hudak. Moving on to the NFL. And Mark, I know you're a football fan. You played football. And the NFL seems to like to change rules. And they're right now trying to design this onside kick if you decide you don't want to go for or they're trying to get rid of the onside kick and move to a 4th and 10.
15.
4th and 15 on your own 25. And if you get it, you get the ball back. Now, you look at the NFL and you look at what happened to the Saints a couple of years ago, which cost them possibly a Super Bowl championship, and bringing in arguments and challenges when it comes to plays that the coaches think they can argue and challenge. Do you think the NFL and Roger Goodell is hurting the game or helping the game by changing these rules?
Well, right now, as you know, the focus is on player safety, right? I mean, that's what's driving a lot of these. It's always with respect to rules change. It's either about competition or it's about player safety. Especially on the kickoff and kickoff return side of things. I mean, these coaches are so creative, and they've just created different ways where you're really attacking the ball, and the guys who are sitting there are taking a tremendous. I was always on the kickoff return team, and you're sort of backpedaling, and these guys have a 40-yard head start, and you're taking them on. Those collisions are significant. So I think a lot of these rules with respect to the kick return game, onside kicks, it's about player safety. So, I'm all for that. I don't think it substantively changes. I haven't seen the latest proposal, but I don't, I'd rather modify some of those things than modify some of the more, substantive things that we know that constitute the game of football. And I think, with respect to replay, look, that what happened to the Saints 2 years ago was really a disaster. And, if you can put some processes and procedures in to eliminate those things from happening again, you got to do it, So, the game's going to, the game's, Roger Goodell has a tough job. I mean, he's highly compensated. So, I think that goes with the territory. That goes with the territory. But I think overall, he's done a pretty good job. These are not the easiest of times either in many ways. And I think he's done a pretty good job of navigating the waters for the most part.
Last question for me. After your playing career at Ithaca, you actually became an offensive line coach at Pitt. And one of the guys you coached ended up being a Hall of Famer in the NFL, in Ruben Brown. Talk about your experience coaching him and coaching at Pitt when you were there.
That time of my life, those 2 years I was at Pitt was a really great time for me personally and professionally. Pittsburgh is a great city to live in. If you've ever been there, I mean, the city itself has a lot to offer, and Pitt football is a big deal there, and Pitt football has a great history. I personally love that whole, steel town, tough Western PA kind of mentality that they have there. So I was right at home. I love being there. I used to ride my bike from my apartment to Pitt Stadium, and ride my bike right into Pitt Stadium and park it, and go to my office and go to work. Johnny Majors was the head coach there. Coach Majors just recently passed away, which was very.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Sorry. Great guy, great person. I love Coach Majors. He was such a nice man. Hall of Fame coach, Hall of Fame player, great player. Heisman runner-up in, I want to say, 1957, maybe something along those lines. And just a coaching tree. Incredible coaching tree. Johnny, Dave Wanstead, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer. I mean, he just had an incredible coaching tree. At one time, I think it was second only to Bill Walsh. But Ruben I was assistant offensive line coach, and I worked with the tackles and tight ends primarily. And Ruben didn't need a whole lot of coaching. But I coached him. I mean, and he lives on Long Island. He could attest to. I'd get in there and bark at him a little bit, but he was such an incredible athlete, And Ruben, when he was at Pitt, when I was there, Ruben was not a great fan of conditioning. Was kind of always a heavier guy, but always had incredible, athleticism and feet, footwork. Was a guy who would run a 4.8, 4.9. I mean, he was a great athlete. But as he evolved as a player and went to the NFL and played for the Bills. I'm originally from Orchard Park, so I mean they love him in Buffalo. He really became a pro, and by that I mean he really learned to take care of his body. He became became a student of the game. I mean he had a great pro career, great college career, great pro career, and a great guy. And he came from inner city Pittsburgh, didn't come from a lot, and he had to sort of grow out of that. Went through a couple instances of his own, and really matured into a really good person and well liked by universally well liked and a great player.
As you guys know, we are talking to Ithaca Football Hall of Famer and National Football Foundation and New York Chairman Mark Hudak. Before we let you go, Mark, I do want to tell you this. I respect everything that you have pointed to us and really given us some great information on Ithaca, your career. And I want to give a shout out to somebody that actually got you on our show, and that's Jillian, our social media. I call her our social media queen. She has worked very, very hard, bringing in so many different guests on our network. And I wanted to give her a shout out with you on the phone. So she's great. She works her butt off. And we have some great people working here at the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Jillian, too. Well, thank you for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. If we would love to come and interview in person, and maybe even come to one of your events for the National Football. The National Football Foundation. We would love to come down, interview some of the people that run the organization. It would be great.
I'd love to have you come aboard and participate. That'd be fantastic.
Absolutely. We'll reach out to you. We really appreciate you joining us, Mark.
Guys, thank you so much. Good luck with the show, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, guys.